Hello and welcome back to Speed Demon Painting. Exciting news coming this weekend from the UK Games Expo, as a lot of new tidbits of information were released about Armoured Clash. Warcradle was present at this event and were actually given demos of the game, and a lot of pictures came out, many of which from On Tabletop. A lot of the info was given in their interviews, but also from Scott from the Markov's Dossier, which is a podcast all about the dystopian age, and if you haven't checked them out yet, I suggest you do, because they've got some lovely information about the game as well. With demos being given, a couple of rules snippets made it out into the wild as well, of course. The game uses a bespoke D6 system and uses the familiar alternate activation that we know from Dystopian Wars as well. And when making attacks, it does seem to work bit different from Dystopian Wars. Attacks will use a combat rating system, depending on how good sort of a shot you have at your opponent, and as you get a better combat rating system, you will get better rerolls for your dice pools. It doesn't look like the dice pools will be as big as they are in Dystopian Wars, because not every weapon is fired separately on each model, but they have 3 different attacks. Stats, basically stats for hitting light targets, heavy targets, and airborne targets. During one of the interviews with On Tabletop, an example was given by Parker, saying they have some light artillery in there for the Crown that is really designed to shoot at heavy targets and will have a very long range when shooting at heavy targets. But when they are shooting at infantry, their range will drop significantly and become quite deadly as well, because that's when they swap to things like grape shots and canister ammunition and that sort of stuff. So you're no longer rolling individual weapons, you're making attacks for a model, and those attacks will depend on the type of target you are aiming them at. Apart from quite a big change in the amount of damage you do and the way you roll your dice, the game will also use a card system that is a bit more familiar to the old Victory and Valor system. It's called the Command and Conquest system in this one, and actually the numbers don't go from 1 to 60 like they do in Dystopian Wars, but just from 1 to 12, and they will be used for various other mechanics, such as a sort of a bravery test, or a leadership test if you will, to see if your troops hold their ground. They will have discipline in the game, which means that you have to take a discipline test involving flipping that card over and seeing if you actually hold by drawing a number that is lower than the discipline value used there. And if they fail that one, you can actually start pushing back troops, forcing them to retreat 2 inches and pushing them off objectives that way. Not a lot of other things could be derived from it other than, you going to UK Games Expo and having a game yourself to check it out, but it does seem that Armoured Clash definitely is not just a bit of a carbon copy of Dystopian Wars but set on land. It uses more of a different system, but will still be familiar for people who play other Dystopian Age games. Now, the rules is one thing. You also get a bunch of different models with the game, and a couple of them were on show for the demos, and one such picture can be seen here, again provided by Scott from Markov's Dossier, and this is the Empire force being depicted here, but Scott also took a couple of detail shots from other units that you could take. For instance, this is a detail shot of some of the tanks, and judging by the size of these things, I see the building in the background that I am familiar with, because the channel has a review of that building set on here as well, and it looks like these guys will be, around 3 to 4 centimeters big, it seems, and they're really cool little things. It's not just the tanks that are important, though. You will be using infantry, and we hadn't seen any artwork for these before. These are some style of terracotta warriors, some automata that are clearly more focused to go into melee, and they look quite a bit beefier compared to some of the other infantry as well. I quite like the look of these. It's very, mysterious, and as the Empire should be. On top of that, they also have the infantry on show, which are these guys with sort of the flat hats on them that fire using shields that are swung on the back, it seems. Some of the artwork in the banner had them depicted in the front, but it seems like they've tucked them away at the back. And that same style of infantry seems to be manning these sort of bikes, trikes-like things that come equipped with some mortars and two guys driving it, one guy steering it and one guy operating the mortar. And as a last unit that was on show for the Empire, we have these very cool robot dog automata that seem to have a sort of flamethrower attack built in as well, and they were used to be quite devastating against infantry. Scott mentioned that they basically one-shot one of his big infantry units, albeit with a lucky roll, because this is a unit designed to be anti-infantry, and that's supposedly how the game plays as well. Now, the Empire will be one of the two factions straight out of the gate when the game launches. The other one is the Crown. Not really a surprise there, because those were the two factions shown on some of the artwork and pamphlets that you get in Dystopian Wars as well. Some really cool models in, though. They have an artillery version of the Behemoth that I personally like the look of best. I mean, this is clearly one that was painted up for a showcase to a very high standard by Daz. I really like how the furnace is burning in the back of this one, and it looks like you actually have plenty of space to mount a bit of plastic models in there. And Stuart on the Discord was saying, like, yeah, this is designed to be like this. You can add all kinds of infantrymen onto them if you want. In terms of armoured units, there were 3 different vehicles on display. The main battle tank, which is shown on the right. In the middle you have sort of an armoured artillery piece, heavy artillery if you will. And then on the left there is the troop carrier from the Crown. And then these are the models that were used during the demo itself. It used the command version of the Behemoth. Again, I'm not entirely sure what the big difference is between them, what bonuses they confer, etc. But yep, this is the one that sort of looks like that cathedral in London. The name escapes me a bit. But I really do like it, and it seems like you can easily swap between both versions should you want to magnetize. The paintwork on this is still great, but it's clear that they were done slightly more simple, because the furnace effect in the back isn't there, so this was clearly one that is painted up for demo purposes. And the other thing that they had on display were these. Some artwork was shown for it. These are the sort of Scottish Black Guard rolling around in their long-legged dragoon-like models that shield themselves with a shield generator, which can be found here at the top as well. Really cool little unit. I can't wait to get my hands on these, because I personally love anything that has to do with Scotland and their units. And then this one is that same troop transport vehicle that we've seen. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if these are production models, because if you look at them carefully, I can see a couple of voxel lines. So these might actually be 3D printed prototypes that they were using for this demonstration. I'm not entirely sure yet, but my keen eye fell on these subtle lines that you see here that were not present on the previous models I showed you that were in the display cabinet. And then finally, here's some infantry as well that got painted up, but unfortunately this shot ended up a bit blurry. The other picture that Scott took from the infantry in the display cabinet sadly is also a bit out of focus, but yeah, you can clearly see that they seem well detailed enough and have some nice features on them. And Scott actually was saying that he was quite impressed with just how sharp they looked in plastic. There's quite a few variants of infantry as well, as it seems, because there are some Rocketeers flying here in the center, and I think these sort of look a bit Scottish as well. Not entirely sure what they do, if they're some sort of special operation squads, but yeah, it seems like you can make multiple variants of this infantry with this kit, which is really, really cool to see. And then there's some lighter artillery piece as well, which is on an infantry style base, so I think they will count as light unit types with the game mechanics that we've just discussed earlier. And there were some other exciting things about the interview Chris did with On Tabletop about Dystopian Wars as well, because it's not supposed to dry up the releases for that game at all. There will be a new campaign book coming soon, maybe as soon as next month, with the landing vessel rules coming out, and the new missions using that civilian set that they released a while ago. So yeah, sort of in line with the old Cyclones of Shadows campaign book, there will be a new box like that, and with that I imagine a new Admiral's Handbook with new matched play rules in there as well. The Dystopian War releases are definitely not drying up. Like they said, there will be new stuff at regular intervals, but the amount of stuff coming for Dystopian Wars will no longer be like 2 or 3 new things every single month. It will be slowed down a bit, because well, they want to make sure that all 8 available factions for Armoured Clash are out there as soon as possible. because they're not planning to do a 2-player starter set for Armoured Clash. If you ask me, that is the smarter choice to do, because, well, if you're releasing a 2-player starter set now, you're going to have to be looking for veteran Dystopian War players that actually have both of those factions or have a buddy that they can split it with. So when Dystopian Wars was released, it was pretty much a new game for the setting as well, and people weren't yet invested in a faction, and that is no longer the case because people are semi-invested through Dystopian Wars. That is to say, if they want to have the missions linked by having landing vessels landing at beachheads and then continuing on with the Armoured Clash system. So yeah, it is the smarter choice if you ask me. The 1-player sets that are going to be released, Stuart said on the Discord, will be significantly larger than their Dystopian Wars equivalent though. So the Dystopian Wars 1-player sets, I believe, ran around £60 if I'm not mistaken, which includes a flagship and then 4 plastic sprues. This looks to be quite a lot bigger for this one, but we'll have to wait and see when the final product is released. Armoured Clash, finally, in a bit of tidbits of news, will have certain encounter levels where you can start off with a small skirmish size encounter, going up to an encounter that is sort of at a mid-range and probably the thing a lot of players will be aiming at, and then one sort of a giant apocalypse-style battle system as well. And from the looks of it, it does not use the same turning templates and the same torrent weapon templates and everything that Dystopian Wars does. In fact, looking closely at this shot, you can see that there are some new tokens in cardboard coming out for Armoured Clash as well, so it's not like they will be using everything the same, and you know, it just goes to show that this really is a standalone game as well if you want to treat it like that. And then finally, to round things off, we had a few teasers via Discord as well. Some renders were previewed. One of the artillery pieces seen on the top here is a thing they showcased quite a few weeks ago by now. And as you can see, it's quite an accurate rendition of the actual model that was on display earlier on in this video. Now, the Empire and the Crown are the first out of the gate, like I said earlier, and the big boxes get out first, meaning the starter sets, and then individual squadrons of those models for those people looking for more models or to make more variants of a same sprue, because that looks to be a thing as well. They're going to be released later on as well, so you're not just going to have to buy, you know, 1-player starter boxes over and over and over again. In addition, there was a little teaser as well of what was coming out. The Union is very likely to appear before the end of the year, making it the 3rd faction to be released this actual year, and then the rest of them following later on. And 2 new models were released as well, the first one being their main battle tank, which is the Rolling Thunder, if I'm not mistaken. Looks quite beefy, has a turret, which apparently is a bit unlikely, or not a common thing at least, in Armoured Clash, because most nations use fixed turrets, with the Union being a bit special that way. And we also see a sort of a more military version of the Ironhide troop transport that we know from Wild West Exodus. Although in Wild West Exodus it is more of a civilian variant with an open cage in the back. This one is more enclosed and protects the crews, or well, rather the troops being transported better, as you know, befits a military style vehicle. And there we have it. That was the news that came out for Armoured Clash from this weekend. Again, if you're looking forward to the game and you like this video, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. And if you want to hear more news about this cool new game coming soon, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, because you can bet I will be knee deep into that game as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, bye.